This is Her Confidence Her Way podcast, episode 43. Are you feeling not confident? Are you telling yourself, no, you're not good enough? You know you can do more. And you know you're better than who you are right now. Ladies, it's not time for you to give up on who you are. Welcome to Her Confidence Her Way podcast. I am Emiko Rasmussen, a confidence building coach and host of this podcast. Each week, I will bring you guests or lessons that will help you to break through your limiting beliefs, fears, and barriers so that you can start building your own confidence and do what you really want to do without worrying about someone else's opinion. We all have a gifted talent that no one can copy, and we're here to let our talent shine. So don't limit yourself. Are you ready to begin your confidence breakthrough journey and discover your true self? Let's go. Today's episode is brought to you by Audible.com. I love learning and I love reading about self-help, female leadership, and any professional development books. But I'm a mom of two, and I'm also a full-time working mom. And I got no time to sit down and enjoy some tea and read in a quiet room. Lucky me, I found Audible and I'm loving it. And I have been a user for over a year now. And I just cannot live without it now. You can listen to your favorite book during your commute, while you're cooking, cleaning, or folding your laundry at home, or even while you're working out. For you, yes you, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to get you the opportunity to check out their service. Get a free Audible download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/therealglobalvoice, or you can go to my website and click on the Audible 30 days trial. I love free stuff, and you should definitely try it. Hey ladies, welcome back to the another episode of Her Confidence Her Way podcast. My name is Emiko Rasmussen and I am your host. Today I am bringing you a guest. She is an expert and I cannot wait to introduce her, so I am just go ahead and introduce you guys. Her name is Nozomi Morgan. Nozomi leads a team of experts in developing global leaders. Her team helps organizations develop co-created culture, which she believes in the foundation of individuals and organizations to fulfill their purpose in this world. Her diverse international background, having lived in Asia, Europe, and North America, gives her a wealth of experience and knowledge as a strategic partner to leaders. Born and raised in Japan, she values integrity, professionalism, and respect, all of which are core tenets of her deeply ingrained heritage. For more than 15 years, Nozomi garnered expertise as a corporate marketer working for top companies such as Delta Airlines, Johnson & Johnson, BBDO, and working with industry-leading clients in the automotive, consumer packaged goods, fashion, finance, entertainment, IT, lifestyle, and airline sectors. Nozomi currently lives in the greater Atlanta area and frequently travels to Tokyo to serve her clients. She enjoys giving back to the community by serving on boards such as Japan American Society of Georgia, National Association of Asian American Professionals. She is also passionate in empowering women to find their own voice and help them become leaders in their life, work, and society. Alright, so that is a little bit about Nozomi, and she will be introducing herself as well. So please enjoy our conversation. Hi Nozomi-san, how are you doing? Thank you so much for coming to my show today.
Hi Emiko, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. I am so excited to have you here and interview you. So, can you tell us more about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So, well, my name is Nozomi Morgan, and I'm CEO of Mitsuki Morgan Worldwide. And we are a company that started in 2012. And what we do is we do intercultural leadership and team development. So what that means is we do consulting, we do training, and also coaching. Primarily, really working with Japanese companies in the United States.
Awesome. And then you mentioned your company name, Michiki.
Yes, Mitsuki
And
Morgan.
yeah, Michiki, what does Michiki mean?
So Michiki actually is my Japanese last name, and
Oh, I see.
so if it's in kanji, it will be doru no do, michi,
Yes. Uh-huh.
and ki. So really simply, it basically means the tree by the road. But the reason why I put that as part of our company name is because I thought it was a perfect illustration of what we do. So Michiki and Morgan, so one is a Japanese last name and one is an English or American last name. So then that's exactly what we do as a company, really bridging the two cultures. And
Mm,
so with anything that you do with people development is really a journey, and there's no arrival, and it's not like a short stop. It really takes time in a good way. So I thought that was just so, and I should actually add to also with any Japanese mastery like
mm-hmm.
or judo, it's the same. You use
Right.
character. So I really thought it's very Japanese. There's a lot of different reasons why I chose to use that the name. So our logo actually is we use that kanji michi as
Yep,
part.
I totally remember, and that's the reason why I asked. I really love your logo, and it actually has the like a pathway as well.
Yes, yes, yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. So, can you share the reason why you decided to become an executive coach and do, all you just explained right now and start your company?
Yeah. So um, why is really because ultimately I realized I really love people. Not that I didn't know that I love people, but it just really came. There's evolution to this, and it's a little bit of a long story, so I'll try to make it as short and well. But ever since I was a little child, so I was born in Japan, and then my father was a Japanese expat. So we moved to Seattle, Washington, when I was 6 months old, and then moved back to Japan when I was 8. And I think from that experience, I was always, living and experiencing two different cultures at a very young age. I was really sensitive with how people respond. Like I could really sense things that were not really spoken. So really reading between the lines. I was always very interested in how people communicate. So including nonverbal communication, all that. And I could always see the greatness in people. And so I was one of those kids when you're, like in school, if you're together and there's always someone who's quiet, I'll be one of those who would always ask, like, what's your opinion or how you're feeling or how you're doing and all that kind of stuff. So that's really who I always was. And in college in Japan, I studied communication. And that led to actually really my love towards marketing. And so that was my career. And in Japan, I was in advertising, and then I decided to go to business school, and I worked also in the United States. And through that experience, actually, the company that I was working for here in the States went through a huge merger. At that time, they became the largest company in the industry, and through that merger, it was really like a life-changing experience because you see really like how leadership impacts employees. You can see how the cultural shift. You can see like the good and the ugly side of people, and that's what really was the whole as a catalyst of me leaving corporate world after working in corporate for 15 years and becoming executive coach, because I realized that it's really it's not really about your performance. It's not about really who you are. It's really about the company and the culture you're working in. And I wanted to help people that have great talent find a way and have the passion, but just really don't know how to navigate through the corporate world. I really wanted to be the person to help pull that out and help people. So that's how it started. And then that's when I started my company. But it has evolved since then. So it really started as a coaching company, but now after years, it has evolved into more of a consulting firm.
Wow, I really love your story. It is so cool to hear how you started from literally from your passion, and you're able to use your experience to it. So can you you mentioned about your especially helping especially a Japanese company. So can you share some biggest challenges that you see in Japanese professional, especially women who are working in a global environment or global working settings?
Yeah, and this actually might not just be Japanese women, but Japanese also in general. But let me think about this for a quick second. If we do focus on Japanese women, and this is something I experienced as well, I think we have this perception of what Japanese women should be like, and as much as you fight that, and I definitely don't want to be labeled like the stereotypical, quiet and what do you call it? Really like a follower type of Japanese women. A lot of Asian women have. I definitely was not like that, and I never ever thought myself like that's who I am. I never wanted to be. But even with that, it's kind of ingrained in your DNA if you grew up in Japan, and that's my parents are Japanese. I lived in Japan since I was 8 years old, which means basically my whole life I went through Japanese in the society. Even though I never agreed to that, never liked it, but still somewhere inside of me, I thought that was the right way to be. And it was really hard, like, because in the American society or any global working environment, it really is important to have your own opinion.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to be loud or anything, but you have to be able to express your thoughts, unless there's no point of you being there. Or and I think that was the hardest part. When someone asked, like, "What do you think?" I was like, I don't know what I think, because no one asked me before, and it took me a long time to realize, actually, I do know what I'm thinking. I just have didn't. All these years, I just didn't know that what I'm thinking actually is okay to just express it, and I was naturally kind of suppressing that and overthinking that it has to be a certain way. It has to be really, a smart thing to say. It has to be, really well thought, like all these things. So that part, I think, is not necessarily just for Japanese women. I think it's more like a Japanese cultural part
in general.
But from a woman's perspective, sometimes, just even speaking up, I would think, oh, but what if someone thinks I'm too aggressive or too pushy or too loud, or like there's all these like little voices in my head that would just circle in my head. So I think that would be the biggest challenge for Japanese women in working in a global setting, that they need to really shut that voice and really show who they are. And be more flexible in understanding what's valued in the global working environment.
Wow, I really love it. So currently you're working as a consultant and helping the Japanese companies here in US. What are the things that you really stress and train them and teach them in terms of how the company can be successful here in US?
Yeah, so there's this framework that we use at Michiki Morgan Worldwide, and it's called the Co-Created Culture and Leadership. And what that means is really the fundamental idea of it is in order to be a globally successful company, the foundation is co-created culture and leadership. And co-created culture is basically really listening and taking in everyone's voices, all the stakeholders. So that would be employees, the investors, the customers, the vendors, the community. So everyone, and really creating an environment that would be a win-win-win for everyone. So that's really what creative culture and leadership is. And the leadership part is someone who can create that environment and really lead to create a co-created culture within the organization. And so when I work with Japanese companies in the U.S., so which means I'll work with the Japanese expats, but also the local employees, which are primarily non-Japanese. So I work with both sides. Really, the starting point is to understand that it's not so much one way is the right way or wrong way. It's just really different, and you have to open your eyes beyond that personal, like emotional feeling, that like the emotional reaction response, and really see and look beyond that and understand it's just because you come from a different place. So what we really teach at the very, very beginning is understanding your own worldview. So if it's a Japanese, seeing that you're looking through that Japanese cultural lens, and if it's working with the American side or the non-Japanese side, saying that, okay, well, you have to understand they have this different culture, so it's not like it's nothing personal. It's just that's the way they operate. So it goes, both ways. That's really the starting point with these companies, and that is the challenge too, just to really see, because we're so used to. It's kind of like so in Japan, how this is such an old story, but when you get married in Japan, like a lot of times they say, "Omisoshiru no aji," is right? Like you're used to what your family makes or what your mother made or what. When you go to someone else's house, you're like, what? It's the same omisoshiru, but it tastes different. Not like one is not good. It's just different. And I think that's the same thing, with corporate cultures and, really bringing in the Japanese headquarter culture and the local culture. They're both great. It's just finding really that sweet spot. And that's the co-created culture part. But finding that sweet spot that makes everyone really excited, engaged, so they can do their best work. And there's a lot. So we have a 7 pillars framework to walk them through that. But it really starts from understanding that it's not so much, it's not personal. It's just you have a different worldview. You have a different value system. So you have to start from there.
Yeah, I really love it, because that's something that I also have learned ever since I step outside of Japan, and I feel like I understand more about who I am and what my cultural value is, and how sometimes I think certain things and then made me realize, like, wow, that is just like a very Japanese way for me to think. But if I'm trying to work with somebody who is not from Japan, then they don't necessarily think that is a common sense, and I need to adjust that and all that. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I would always, when we do trainings or even coaching, so common sense is actually a really dangerous word. There really isn't anything that is common sense. So that's one thing that we definitely have.
I think it was like 2 episodes ago. I invited someone. Her name is Miki, and she also mentioned about whatever the common sense that you had, she had to throw away in order for her to be successful here in US. So I totally get that. Yeah. All right. So you have mentioned that you have been working in corporate America for over, did you say 15 years? 15 years? About 15. Yeah. So can you tell us your challenge while you're working in a corporate company in US, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. So actually, the years I worked in corporate America, really, if we just focus on America, so I worked in a Fortune 500 company for like roughly 5 years. So the challenge that I had to overcome is kind of something like I said a little bit earlier, but really overcoming for that. I have to speak up, and I have to find what my value is, what I bring to the table. Growing up in the Japanese culture, you don't really think about what I bring or who I am. It's more of like, once you join a company, you pretty much stay in that company. And as the years goes by, naturally you acquire skills and experience. And it's not, a lot of times that's what they're looking for. They're not really looking for you to really be clear on what your strengths are and all that. But in the States, in companies, from actually day one, even through the interview process, it's a lot about what you can deliver, what value you can add. And, I really, really think the biggest difference in what was really challenging for me is they don't really teach you how to do things. They basically throw you into that position, and they expect you to perform without being, this hand-holding or without any training, which I think also is very different from Japanese companies, that they look at you in a longer term, that they don't expect you to know everything at the very beginning, or they don't expect you to like perform at, from day one at the high level. They kind of like, it's okay to ease in. And so I remember when I first joined, I was like so surprised. Like I had no clue. You have to find answers by yourself. So really being proactive, waiting around. No one will, really, not that they're mean or anything. It's just that you're expected to ask for help if you need help. And if you don't ask, it will not come. So I think the biggest challenge for me, because I was so used to, like in Japanese companies, there's always tons of senpai that would help you. They're always, someone will come around and be like, are you okay? They'll ask you. But American companies, there might be someone like that, but just in general, when it comes to the work part, it's not, and it's extremely, especially when you're making career changes or when you move to a different company, you have to really perform at a high level, especially the first 90 days is so critical. And if you can't really show, almost like be an overachiever and really perform, at the highest that you can during that period, you create a perception. And that perception will be basically a story for the rest of your time at that company. So that's, I think, was the biggest thing for me, that I didn't realize, that I had to have to ask for help. No one's going to help me unless I ask for it. That was the biggest challenge. And I really learned the lesson in the hard way, that I got completely burnt out at the end. And realized that it's, it was me. I didn't ask for help. I didn't tell people that I needed help here or there or support. That was something that's what I really learned. It hurt. It really hit my self-confidence, because I felt like I was failing and I felt like I was underperforming. But I thought asking help really is showing weakness. Thought like, someone should help me. They should know that that I'm struggling, but that wasn't.
Yeah. And then do you think that, like the Japanese culture, questioning something is seen as, I don't know if negative is the right term, but, questioning or asking something is not necessarily common for Japanese culture. For example, after somebody do a presentation or something, then, do you have any questions? And here in US, people just raise their hand, and even if it's not the question, it's just an opinion, but they love to share, versus the one in Japan, it's tend to be quiet. So do you think that maybe, asking, when I was working in a managing, I hire people, and I do remember those individuals who are more like a self-starter, meaning, asking questions and, asking like, what else can I do? Like those people perform better. Do you think that maybe you had some sort of like idea that maybe, asking questions is not a good thing?
Yeah, well, I thought I had to do like intensive research
Mm.
and exhaust every options I have before I ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I think a lot of times, I think that might have been the perfectionist part of me too, but I need to do my homework in order to ask a question. And I think that is very part of the Japanese culture that I do see, even working with, the companies here in the States. A lot of, non-Japanese, well, we'll just say Americans to simplify
Mm-hmm.
it, but they,
Yeah.
like you said, they'll ask questions even if you actually sat and looked through the presentation, the answers were there, but they're not ashamed to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, so even if someone asked the exact same question before them, they'll still ask the question, and you're sometimes like, you were like, weren't you listening? But which so I think that was definitely the part culturally kind of going back. I was trained to be like, well, if you're going to ask a question, it better be something really worth asking.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, because that people will judge you and say like, oh, you were not
Right.
listening or you're not smart enough to understand, whatever it is. I think that was what was really holding me back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that is actually one thing. I do think Japanese need to, especially if you're working overseas or working with people that are outside of Japan, that they really need to overcome, because with the pace of change that we're seeing in the world, and also just so, especially with how things are, there's nothing that everything is so new. Like, for example, the ride share like Uber and Lyft, it didn't
Mm-hmm.
exist 10 years ago. So
Right.
it's okay to ask about it. If you don't know it, that's fine. Which is so there's so many things that even if you're like top of your game, you might not know. Which is different from the old days where you could have probably looked it up, right? Like if you looked up the encyclopedia, it should be so
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
ways to look it up. But I think nowadays it's just so many new things, just way too many things that it's completely okay to ask. If you don't ask, you're going to be left behind. So I think it's something critical that, yeah, especially for Japanese, they need to overcome that fear of being judged or really worrying about what other people think of you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And I am going to kind of like a switch gear. And one of the things that you teach is also leadership. And
Yeah.
how Japanese and the Western culture, or I'm just going to say America, here in American culture, view leadership differently in a business settings. And on your website, you talk about leadership is a choice. So can you tell us more about it?
Yeah. So I'll start with what leadership as a choice means. So
Mm-hmm.
really, what I believe is, especially today and going forward. So simply, a leader is someone that can make things happen, which means in the old days. So, and when I say old, also a lot of parts in the Japanese culture is that leader is someone that is either senior than you are or has a certain position or title, is how they would define what a leader is. But I really believe that that needs to change, and that is changing. And it's someone who can make things happen or make a difference. So moving things forward. So what that means is that anyone, even if you're like a 3-year-old, if you decide to be the leader, you can. And that's what I mean by leadership as a choice. So you can have a title, but if you're not making things happen, then you're not a leader. So I think really in today's world, if you want to be successful, if you want to really live, not just professionally, but if you want to have a really, fulfilling life, it's really about making things happen, meaning being proactive and being a leader of your own life. And I think that's where it all starts. So for folks that are struggling to be a leader or succeeding in the workplace, I would really start with looking at yourself, at your own life, and are you really leading your own life? Because if you can't lead your own self, which is the closest and most important unit ever,
Mm-hmm.
it's I was just nearly impossible to lead someone else. That is, going back to there's no common sense. You don't understand each other. You have different interests, values. So that's what I mean by what leadership choice is, that you can choose to be a leader at any time, any point of your life. And it's not, you should not wait for someone else to come and tap on your shoulder and say, hey, like, you're a leader, it should come within.
And then how do you see a do you see a difference between the idea of leadership and like from Japanese side and the American side in the business settings?
Yeah, I would say not so much leadership is different, but how the leadership styles might be different. But I think the comp sense is more, that's a little bit less different. Culturally, I think there's not a lot of difference. It's more of what's the shift that I see in leadership. In leadership itself is just shifting. The concept is shifting. But how we see how the leaders show up will be different. For example, in the States, going back to really having a strong opinion, being able to influence people is a strong leader. So when you say strong leader, describe a strong leader, there'll be someone who's really passionate, energetic, really connects with people and down to earth, and they talk fast and all that kind of stuff. If you would ask someone in Japan, they might say that, but I typically would see a little bit someone who's more calm, centered, almost Zen monk that wouldn't doesn't sweat, and is someone that really, when things are like falling apart, is always like that rock that you can totally rely on. So that a person like that will builds more trust or is more respected than someone who's like super energetic and kind of talking so fast and kind of all over the place. So it's different of leadership style, and it doesn't mean one's better than the other. It's just what works in order to make things happen. So in order to lead and have followers and influence people, which works better in different cultures as well. I'm sure if you go to China, if you go to like Germany, if you go to India, that will look different too.
Love it. So when I was actually one of my coaching clients, she was kept saying like, no, I'm not really a leader, and I don't think I want to be a leader. And she said, but I really like to help, and I am the type of person who is she says, en no shita no chikaramochi.
Hi.
And as I was listening, all what she described was pretty much that's what the servant leadership is all about. Like she was, identifying, what is needed for a specific situation, and she will provide a guidance, and not necessarily she's the type of person to lead, meaning stand in front of people and lead, but it's more like she is standing from the behind, but she's making sure that everything's all set and help them. And she said that, no, I don't think I'm a leader, and because she said I'm not very powerful. I mean, pretty much she had that idea of manager, like managing equal leadership. So I kind of like helped her to really understand, like, well, you can be, there are people who are CEO or manager, but they're not necessarily a leader. So I thought that it was very interesting for me to hear about, not really, for her, not really understanding what the true leader is about. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a common misunderstanding that a lot of women actually have. So one of my clients too, someone I worked with years ago, she was very experienced. She was in her 50s, and she was in the financial service area. But she always thought that she's definitely a hard worker, very responsible, reliable. And she didn't also, just like you described, she didn't think she was a leader either. And she didn't realize that she can actually be more proactive, and instead of waiting for things to happen to her, she can actually make things happen. And once she realized that that's what a leader is, and it totally kind of like opened, like the clouds parted and this like a sky opened up for her. And it really was able to see what her strengths are, because going back to just like your client described, she thought like leaders have to be a certain way. But by understanding that leaders lead in different ways, it can be from the front, it can be from the middle, it can be from the back. It's different, and each person is different. So you don't have to be, you have to do it. You don't have to do it in certain ways. When she realized that, she was really able to open up her career and open doors in so many different ways. It suddenly, she was more recognized. She would be invited to lead certain projects. So it really is an inside job, meaning that it's not all of, anyone who's listening to this, I can 100% with confidence, even if I haven't met you yet, can tell you you're already enough. You have have the experience to be a leader. It's just a matter of going back to deciding that you are a leader and you want to be a leader, and the rest will come. There are skill sets that, yes, absolutely, you have to upgrade as you evolve, as your career progresses and all that. But you as a person are definitely enough. And really the people that you see climbing up, say, the ladder really quickly is not because they're better than you are. They're not smarter than you are. Absolutely. They might even have less experience, but it's because they've chose to become a leader, and they're doing really focusing on that. So I would say, that's the biggest difference that I see, and especially for your audience that are, wanting to overcome certain challenges. And if they're frustrated in where they are, I would say really, work on yourself and make that decision, and the rest will follow.
This is so empowering. Thank you so much. So in both US and Japanese culture, we as a woman are still facing inequalities in the workforce, salary gaps and glass ceilings. How do you recommend we continue to move forward and challenge our executive glass ceilings and inequalities and all those salary gaps?
Yeah. So with this is one, the one thing I would really say is be clear on what you want. So a lot of times, and don't be okay with just because, or don't settle for just saying, don't settle with saying that it's just the way it is. I think that would be the way to move forward. Because I think a lot of people, what I see is that as much as they complain about it, like, if there's inequalities or salary gaps, but they basically say, well, at the end of the day, it's just the way it is. There's nothing I can do. And if you come from that mindset, yeah, nothing will change because you're really not doing anything. But you also have to be clear of what you want. So, for example, the glass ceiling, it's true, but it's not true, because there are, say, Japanese women that are executives. There are, they might not be around you, and yes, there are not a lot of them, but people, there are people that are accomplishing it. So it's just a matter of going back to that decision and finding a way to get there. But if you don't make the decision and you're just kind of like, that sounds great, it's not happening to me, it won't happen until you really know that you've done it. So inequality too. Going back to stats and studies definitely show that women are paid dollar, I forget exactly what numbers, like 86 cents or something to the dollar. So there are inequalities, but again, that's a stat. Those are studies and stats that are looking at the big group of people. But if you look at individuals, the IBM's CEO is a woman. She's not Japanese, but there's so many IT companies actually have women CEOs, and these are big players, and so they do exist. It's just a choice of you deciding that, I want to be like that person, or I want to be there, and then things will happen. So I wouldn't focus actually on the inequalities or the gaps or feeling, because when you focus on something, it keeps on growing.
True.
Right? So I would really shift your focus on what do you want. So if you want paid more, if you want more responsibility, then focus on that, because then, like you say in Japanese, michi wa hiraku. Have to what you want first. Do that.
That is so true. I never really thought or see or think this way. So it's so important for us to not necessarily just focus on, here you go again. I didn't get promoted, but the other person got promoted. So instead of that, okay, well, I didn't get that opportunity. Okay, so what can I do? And this is what I want, and how can I get there?
Yeah, really shift the energy and your time and effort to how can you make it happen instead of dwelling on why did that person get it. It doesn't matter because it's done. It's the past. So I would really shift the energy onto going back to be the leader of your own life and make it happen.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. So as Japanese tend to be, this is something that you mentioned it like earlier, we tend to be a quiet nationality compared to other nationalities, especially here in US, Americans. Being quiet doesn't mean that we're not confident and we can't lead. What can we do to adjust and use one of our great virtue, being reserved and be able to read the atmosphere or kuki o yomu so that we can still stand out and show our talent?
Yeah, so I love that you say it's adjust. So, because I do believe you shouldn't change. Like who you are is who you are. You should really honor that and respect that. But what you do have to learn to do is adjusting, or I like to use the word flex. Just like I love to use the bamboo as an example. But you know how flexible it is, so you can bend it, and the core is really strong, right? Because the reason why you can fix it is because the core is strong. Because going back to using the analogy, using this as an example, that they know who they are, they know their strengths, they know that they're reserved and have these great virtues. But you have to flex it sometimes in order to be effective. So if you're in a room of non-Japanese, that the way that you can get through to the person is by speaking up or speaking in a bigger voice, a louder voice, then you have to do that. But it doesn't mean you're changing yourself. It's just meaning that you're going to choose a way to become more effective. So it's not about changing you to become someone else again, but it's at that moment, what is the most effective way to communicate with this person? And really flex or stretch or shift yourself. So like bend. But when you're done with it, then if you let go, then the bamboo will, bounce back and stand tall again. And so it doesn't break, right? It's just bending because you are confident. You know who you are. You know what your strengths are. But you're able, because you're confident, you know where you stand. Your ground is really, steady. Grounded, you could always bend in different directions. And I love using the bamboo as an example because you can even change. It can become, you can use bamboo, for building things, or you can actually eat, like takenoko, you can eat it. You can eat it for like floor materials. You can use it in art. It can become like weaving baskets. There's so many different things you can do, but you always can tell it's a bamboo. Like, it's so easy to spot what it is. And I think that's what it's about. It's not about, again, you being authentic you and knowing who you are, but you can morph into different things at different times to be effective and to really going back to be the leader and making things happen. And I think if you think like that, you can stay the authentic self, because I know that's what bothers a lot of people. They're like, oh, I don't want to be like this person. But going back to, it's not like you're going to be 24/7 that person. You're just going to find the most effective way to get things done.
This is so beautiful, and I love how you mentioned about the bamboo. Pretty much, you have the core. You have to know who you are and all that, because that's something that at one time I made a mistake. When I first became a manager, there wasn't really a leadership training or like a managerial training or anything, and I had no idea what to do. And all what I did was just copy my previous managers, and they are a completely different personality. I mean, they have a different personality in terms of, especially some people may know this term, the DISC style, the communication style.
Yeah.
That I mentioned this from different podcast episode, but pretty much all of my previous managers, they are a D, so they're very direct. It's like bullet points, boom, 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 very goal oriented. Versus me, I am more so of an SI, and I really focus on harmony and like to tell a story. And one time, I just didn't know how to I guess what's the term that I'm looking for? Very not. What's the word that I'm looking for? It's like not strong.
Assertive?
Assertive, thank you, yes. So I didn't know how to be assertive, and I pretty much copy what they're doing, and people thought that I'm just mad. Yeah. And I'm like, this is not right, and I have to really learn, what my communication style is and how I can speak up. I have to find my own way to do so. So, yeah, it was a great lesson for me.
I can totally relate to that. So I'm actually an SI as well, so I have a hard time. Direct is very difficult for me. So, being Japanese, being direct is hard, but even from a communication style standpoint, it's very difficult for me. It doesn't come naturally at all. So if you know DISC, so that's actually one of the assessments that we use in our firm as well. But when you look at the assessment, when you look at the profile, they teach you that where your dot is, you're always a combination of all the styles. It's just your natural tendency is where that dot is. So to be effective, you can stretch like a rubber band, but you just know that the further out you stretch, there's more tension. So that's why it's really stressful for you, but you can do it. But it just means you can't do it all the time, or it takes a lot of energy. So you want to rest after that, and you take a lot of self-care after you do that. But yeah, so for anyone, it just takes a little practice. And you might, just like you experienced, sometimes you make mistakes or it doesn't go well. I definitely had a very similar experience as well. One of the teammates that I was managing, because I was really trying to be assertive and direct, thought I was mad and upset too. And he would come up and say, Nozomi, why are you upset? And I was like, I'm not upset. I'm trying to be that strong manager,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to hear I'm not the only one in that. Thank you for sharing. So this is my last question. I believe that everyone has a gifted talent that no one can copy. What is yours, and how are you using your gifted talent?
That's such a great question. I would say my talent is really to connecting with people. And also connecting people to people, connecting culture. And so how I use that is, I use it with the business that I do. So that's one that I realized, kind of going back to really doing what I am passionate about, but really doing my genius work. And I realized that connecting is that. But in a personal level, I think how it shows up is that it really helps me to be great as a consultant, as a coach, as a facilitator, because I can really connect with a person I'm working with, connecting with a company I'm working with, and really I can see a lot of things that other people might not be able to see, just because it's a gift, right? It's not like I have been trained, but also naturally it comes natural to me, and it's just such a joy and fun to do that. So yeah, I think I would say connecting with you, Emiko-san, you're the one who reached out, but I just really feel like the instant connection, and I really cherish, this connection that we've built and starting to, really build the relationship. And I think that connection leads to relationship building, and ultimately, we all live in a society, and you don't have to have, millions of relationships. But I think what I do really well is to really create those meaningful relationships and really make it, authentic. I don't do it just for business or just for this. I really connect with people that I really truly care, that I will, at any different level, it doesn't matter, and really be service to them. So I think that connection is my talent.
Nozomi-san, I feel like you are so great with explain things in a very artistic way. It's so beautiful the way how you explain things and all that. So thank you so much for all that. Can you tell us how we can find you and what is the best way for our listener to for my listener to connect with you?
Yeah, well, in today's world, there's so many ways to connect. One thing I can share with you, you can easily find me by going to my website, which is www.nozomimorgan, so NOZOMIMORGAN.com, just my full name. And I'm really active on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook as well. So there's not a lot of Nozomi Morgans in this world. Thankfully, I'm really lucky. So just Google, or actually all my, like the Twitter handle and all those are all Nozomi Morgan. Very simple. Just go to any social media that you want to, that you use the most. Just go to Nozomi Morgan. You can easily find me. And I really, really love using LinkedIn. So the best way to connect, if you have any questions, if you want to learn more about the work that we do, the best way would actually be to connect with me on LinkedIn. So again, look at Nozomi Morgan, just search and send me a request, connection request, and then if you can kindly say, I heard the podcast, that would be the best, so I know to make sure that I connect with you. Because I get a lot of requests. And sometimes they're the odd ones too. But if I can see that you came through the podcast, then I'll make sure that I will connect, and we can definitely chat. Or if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Yay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. And, I have like full sheets just like writing all that. So I have learned a lot, and this is definitely going to be really helpful for especially working professional women. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I struggled a lot. Today we didn't talk too much about my struggle, but I have tons of shipaidan too. So,
well, that means you're going to have to come back to Her Confidence, Her Way podcast again.
Yeah, I'll love to.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. There you have it. I hope you had enjoyed my conversation with Nozomi. Don't you think that this interview is just packed with all the goodness? Yeah? Yeah, I can see you nodding. Yeah, I took lots of notes as usual. I love learning from people and their experiences. I think that's the best textbook that we can get. Okay, so there are so many things that I wanted to address, but one of the very important things that I want to point out is about Japanese women are this, like how we should be acting, how we should be doing this in a certain way, and you know what I'm talking about. You don't have to be loud to stand out. That's not the only way, right? But it is very important for you to really know what kind of opinion that you have. During the interview, Nozomi mentioned about it is very important to speak up and know how you are thinking or what you're thinking about the specific subject that you're in the meeting or whatever. And Nozomi even, she said that she struggled. And of course, I was the same way when I was in the meeting or even in the group discussion, which in the US, they do that even at college. I struggled a lot. I had no idea what to say, right? And to just give you a little bit of context, I guess, or the history is, I want you to think about it. When you are a student, maybe high school or even junior high, not so much in college. I cannot really say much about college just because the college that I went to was the one that I went to in Japan is very close to the American like a college, So I had to train from there how to really express my opinion. But anyway, so going back high school and middle school, in the classroom, have your teacher ever asked your opinion in the classroom? I do not remember. I wouldn't say like anyone, but majority of my classroom, right, the memories, I don't think the teacher asked us our opinion. So how do you think? What do you think about this? I think all the teachers, they asked us, read this, answer these questions. Oh, you're right, you're wrong, you fail, you're a bad student. Well, not really that, but you get that point. So as Japanese, we grew up in an environment where we didn't really have that opportunity to practice that. The only thing that we needed to say was the right answer. Maybe that's one of the reasons why we struggle, right? Because we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to say anything that is so embarrassing, right? And we never had that opportunity to really think, how am I feeling? What am I thinking towards this subject or whatever? Right? So I think this is where we struggle a lot. And I talked about this in the previous episode about the individualism and collectivism. Especially in the US, we love to do group discussion. And at the end, we come as a group together and we share what we discussed. So yeah, I still remember whenever we go through those trainings and we have to share, and I needed to really put myself out there, right? So I volunteered myself to really summarize what the group was saying. And of course, the very first time it didn't really go well, and that was very embarrassing. But of course, the other people who helped me and jumped in, but I was kept doing it because, obviously one time practice that's nothing. That's just a step to really outside, and okay, I did it. It wasn't that bad. It wasn't so painful as I thought. And then next time I did it again and again and then again, right? So that's how you really become better. If you don't do it, and you cannot obviously improve yourself. So yeah, so this week's challenge for you, every week after the episode, I give you guys a challenge in the Facebook free community, Her Confidence, Her Way community. So if you're not part of the group, make sure you're joining. You can go to my website, www.theemmystyle.com, and you'll see the button to join the group, or you can search Her Confidence, Her Way, and that group should pop up. So the action item, the challenge for you this week is to be aware of your opinion. And I'm not asking you to share in front of people or in the public. That is a huge jump, especially understanding who we are. That is huge. So when you're in the meeting, business meeting, group discussion, or having a conversation with your boss, I want you to be aware of your feeling, or what are you thinking? Are you agreeing, disagreeing? Do you see a different point of view? Do you actually come up with a brilliant idea? Whatever that is. If you really want to share, you can go ahead. I think that's great, but I think in order for us to really do something different, we have to start small somewhere. So at this time, I want you to be aware. Oh, I have something in my mind. That's my opinion. Or you can even write it down on a piece of paper, right? And in the community, I want you to share what your experience is like. If you share in the public, please share your experience. I want to know. So come join our free community. That's where I hang out a lot and connect with people, and I give you some challenges, and that's where I do live lessons and pop up here and there. So yes, come join us. All right, the other thing that Nozomi mentioned about was the leadership is a choice, and it is so important. We in the conversation or the interview, we kind of talked about the different leadership styles. There isn't one way to lead. There are so many ways that we can lead, and it's your decision. You have to, once you decide and you're a leader, right? And one of the things that I still remember is one time somebody told me, like, I see your great leadership skills, and like, really? And that's when I start kind of like working on, okay, what is this leadership is about? And obviously there are some skills that I have to really level up, and I did that. I took so many leadership trainings and all that, but you don't have to. The leadership quality is something that it's there. It's whether you want to decide to use it or not. Obviously not everybody can be a leader, that's one, but you can be a leader of your own. That's for sure. I'm a leader of this community of Her Confidence Her Way, and I'm a leader of my daughters. I have to be a leader. I have to be a great example for my kids. And I'm a leader of my group of friends. I'm the one who always coming up with the ideas and making sure that everybody's connected. And I guess it's part of it. It comes natural to me, at least, because I'm a people person. So you have to know who you are first, but there is no one way to lead. Whether you're introverted or extroverted, you can be a leader. So if you want to learn more about it, definitely visit Nozomi's website as well. I have posted all the links on the show notes, so you can go there. Her website is www.nozomimorgan.com. It should be easy for you to find her website. So check it out, her episode information, and from there you can connect with her as well. Nozomi also has a newsletter, so you can sign up from her website as well. And she has a LinkedIn, and she has Facebook, and she has her article was featured at Huffington Post. So that's really amazing. So I want you to check that out. I have posted the link as well. All right, so that is all for today, and thank you so much for joining us today. I cannot wait to catch you on the next episode, so have a wonderful day. Bye. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today. Make sure to subscribe to Her Confidence Her Way podcast and leave a review, which will help this podcast to be more visible so that other women can find this podcast easily. For free monthly newsletter, free private Her Confidence Her Way community, and learn how you can get free weekly lesson to help you build your self-confidence, go to www.theamystyle.com. Ladies, you don't need a permission from someone else to believe yourself. Just be you, because you are amazing. Let's support each other and keep on building your confidence.